I was on eBay earlier and I have a little bit of an observation, and this is something I wanted to put out there because it really, I don't know, it could just be simple supply and demand, but it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. So I'm on eBay, of course. You got to keep an eye out there for good, fun, used gear deals. And some of the prices just didn't seem to make sense to me. So look here, you can get some really nice Sunblade 1000s. I've got one of these. I paid about half this, but still, we're talking about $120. You get disc, dual CPU. Um, one has a drive, the other one doesn't. Totally usable machines. As an you can actually do some work on it today. So a 2000, bit beefier, faster processors. Yeah, you get a little bit higher price, right? So $600. This all makes sense, right? Again, Sunblade 2000, pretty cool. You can run Solaris 11. I think you can do that on the Sunblade 1000, although probably stick with 10. Um, so let's take a look at some Spark stations. Spark Station 10, not very expensive. So there's a 5. Again, you're in the $100, $200 range. Spark Station 20 gets a little bit more expensive. This is another one of those things I don't really understand as much. At this point, that extra bit of speed because you have the slightly faster S bus between a 20 and a 10, for most people who are just into retro computing, it's not going to make a big difference. The availability of drives, because you could then get SCA drives in a caddy versus the SparkStation 10's weird mounting kind of pegs and the 50-pin drives. Yeah, that may make it a little bit of an advantage. But as we've seen, you can use like the SCSI to SD. You can boot off the network, etc. A nice 100 megabit card, and you'll be doing good net booting on that NFS access. So again, this is the first oddity, and I think I may have commented on this before, is why SparkStation 10s are more expensive, right? Uh, let's see. So here we go. So not bad, right? But a little bit more expensive for the SparkStation 20. I mean, so not too bad, right? Things make sense here. But let's say you want an SGI. I thought, hey, it might be fun to make some videos on SGI. There was a big block of time from, call it, 99, 2000 through 2003 or 4, I guess. I had SGI on my desk, right? So I had both a Sunblade 100. It was a Spark Station earlier, but then a Sunblade 100 and an SGI, either an O2 or an Octane. So let's take a look. So O2 is kind of their low end, right? $50. You get a Spark Station 10 for that. Hey, this is just the chassis only. Just the box, this weird toaster box. So here you go, $200. Again, this is low end. Um, so let's for comparison, let's do what the rough equivalent would be, um, which would be an ultra, say an ultra 5, just for easiness. So okay, prices look about the same. So here you get one that's a little cheaper. Is that one in a box? That'd be nice. Um, might have I might have to save that for later. So again, the ultra, this low end ultra stuff doesn't have a whole lot of value anymore unless you're trying to do something like run Solaris 7, right? So there may be some value there, but again, for retro computing enthusiasts, you probably want to stick with the top end 32-bit Spark rather than the low end or the early 64-bit, the Ultra Spark stuff. But back to SGI. So some of these prices, here we go. Roughly the same thing, same power. And true, this can do a little bit of audio video. Look at that. So that's again a top of the range, low end O2. $1,000. $1,000, just a quarter gig of memory. So that's not too bad, right? But so something that's equivalent to the Sunblade 1000, or actually a little bit slower in some regards in terms of clock speed and disk performance, would be an Octane. And so here's one, 269. So we're looking at twice. That one looks like something specialized for some medical equipment. There you get two for 200. But still, more expensive, but still sort of in the realm of possibilities. SGIs were sort of specialized. They certainly sold fewer of them than they did Sun workstations, because in some ways they were a little bit less useful. Again, I used them. I was involved in some post-production companies, so we had SGI stuff as an admin. I had to have an SGI to really embrace it and to write some software for IRIX, right? So some desktop apps for the IRIX workstations or SGI workstations. So it's a bit more expensive, and you can sort of explain that. And in fairness, these had excellent, and Octane could do some excellent graphics capabilities for its time. These were built like a tank, could support dual CPUs, drives on sleds. Excellent, very well made. Just like the Sun gear up through the Sunblade 2000, kind of the last of their really different Unix workstations. Um, but what started to really bother me, and this may be just the brand, I don't know. I mean, this would be interesting to find out what you guys think in the comments. So around the same era as the Ultra Spark and the Sunblades, a little bit before the Sunblades, I should say, and around the same era as the Silicon Graphics stuff we look at, or a little bit before. Let's take a look at an Alpha Station. Woohoo! Do you see this? $4,000, $2,500. There's a really low end one, probably pretty early on, almost $1,000, $1,200. Again, almost 5,000. What is it with the Alpha Stations, right? Again, on Alpha, yeah, you can run VMS, so that's a plus, right? Or so your OS choices on Alpha Station were VMS, Linux, unless you had some software built. I think some of the early ones supported NT 3.5 and 4. Again, I'm not a Windows person, so I don't know. So maybe you could do that, but what software really was there for that? And the stuff for Linux, probably mostly open source. And True 64, DEC 64-bit Unix. So why are these so expensive? Is this market driving companies that need to maintain some weird legacy thing? And again, on the server side, it's a little different, right? So on the server side, you may have some weird process. I know working with a company, they had some stuff on SCO and COBOL and stuff that had its time had come and gone by like 1992, and it's 2010 and they're still using it. Uh, but if it's on the VMS side, I don't know enough about VMS software. There should be an upgrade path to the HP Integrity, so the Itanium stuff. Which again, getting a new Itanium system at probably cheaper. You probably replace a few. So the server side, I guess, sort of makes a little bit of sense. But on the workstation side, these are workstations here. What's going on? Very interesting. Very interesting. So we're talking about something uh, around the same vintage as, say, the Sun Ultra 5 we looked at, right? So call this equivalent to the Ultra 5. $800, so 4 times the price. The plot thickens even more. Again, does anyone other than retro computing enthusiasts want an Alpha Station? I can't think of anything, just like I wouldn't expect anyone to do any real work on a Spark Station 10. I love mine. It's great. It's probably going to find a home as an X term at some point, because if the monitors looked great, the keyboard, as I showed off my Sun Type 4 keyboard, you got a Type 4 mouse. It's probably the most comfortable X Windows environment. It has some limitations, right? So the TGX graphics in their CG6, um, it's accelerated 2D, but you only get 8-bit color depth. So it has some problems, but for doing development, writing code, you got Emacs, a couple X terms up. Wonderful thing. And maybe you can do the same thing with an Alpha Station, but for $2,500? No, you can get yourself a brand new, Intel workstation, right? Like an i7 or even a Xeon for that price. Be insanely more powerful, and if you're running in a business sense, do your Alpha under emulation, right? So that's that's the alpha. So that bothered me a bit as to why these things are so expensive. Um, insane here. Okay, so here are some uh, others. That's cheapest probably I've seen for complete systems, 650. Still, look at this, 1 gigahertz, right? So call that roughly the same as that Sunblade 2000, but less memory, $4,000. So 5 times the price, right, of the equivalent Sun or a better Sun workstation. So again, are people trying to run True 64? Is that their goal? VMS, maybe. So this is where things get really weird. Say I want to go back a generation on DEC stuff. Go back to the VAC station. So these here are really ancient, right? So this is the 3100. What's it? 12.5 megahertz or 25 megahertz. I mean, so these are real dogs. I have one, and for Ultrix, it would probably work out okay. I mean, I've run OpenBSD on it, NetBSD. It's pretty slow, right? So those are there. But hey, we get a little bit more modern. So this VAC Station 4000, hmm, that's like a kind of a lowish end. Let's say a Spark Station 2 or 2, something like that, a Spark Classic. Being generous, we'll say, hey, that's equivalent to a Spark Station 10, even though this is uniprocessor. $2,600. $2,600 for a VAC Station 4000. Uh, my mind is blown, right? And again, you're on a VAC station, you get VMS or Ultrix. And again, I've been playing around with Ultrix here, and a video should come out soon. I've run it took a while to find an Ultrix CD. Uh, so I'll be doing a video on Ultrix and doing a VAC station sort of thing under SimH, which brings up the other point is SimH, I think, and on some reasonably modern gear, I think I've tested it, SimH gets you at least close to the peak performance VAX that ever was released. And I could be wrong here. This is all based on VUPS. So what is that, VAX unit of performance? Whatever that acronym stands for. Is on my AMD processor, I can get, what, 40 VUPS or something for a single process. Obviously, multi-processor, big, the mid range kind of mini style VAX. So this is a VAX station, so one CPU. That's crazy, $2,500. And again, we're looking at the VAX station 3100s here and another thing. So that's a little bit faster. The M76, a couple $100. That's crazy. So for comparison, let's take a look at what is this one here? So that's 64 megs of RAM and I don't know, whatever that was, whatever processor speed that is. Um, let's take a look at a Spark 5. So yeah, there you get one with a $79. That would be better. Here's one, twice the RAM, disk, comes with some expansion cards, uniprocessor system, right? So 175, much better system than that, lower price. Again, you're stuck with Linux, BSD, OpenBSD, Solaris. I shouldn't have mentioned those three things. So SunOS or Solaris on this. I don't know if SunOS will even run, but Solaris, that's what you'd want to be doing with your Spark stations. Here's one that's a little, sometimes people on eBay throw a wild price at you. No one's probably going to buy that for $400. I certainly wouldn't. But why that? You know, and these prices have gone up as well because I got my 3100. Right, it's one of these low end. I made an offer of $5 or $10. I mean, most of it was shipping to get that, which is about what they're worth. So this is really unusual. So here's another 4090, almost $2,000. Let's see if it has any specs on it. So okay, so it's tested. There you go. There's the monitor, whatever VMB, I guess. and so it's got a display. It's only 32 megs of memory. Does it come with any drives? Yep, you get a 2 gig SCSI disk, right? So the stuff on your SparkStation 5 is going to be much more powerful. But let's go even one step further back. Let's take a look at a deck station. Now these were real oddballs. So these ran Ultrix, right? So the only appeal here, and I think it was the 5000 series. This is kind of upper end, but this is such an oddball, right? Again, only of value to someone who's interested in collecting this. Only of value to someone who's interested in the history. I had one of these at one point. I think this is, Deck Station 5000 should be one of the MIPS based decks. And again, this oddball um, monitor connection and all the goofiness of them. So they had MIPS processors. This was kind of before they went with Alpha. They wanted a Unix workstation. You cannot even run VMS on this. So this is just free operating systems that have been ported to it. I don't know what those would be. Linux certainly. I ran Linux on mine when I had one, and I had one of these in the late 90s, right, which I got for eBay for less than this. So we've got the personal deck station. It's essentially the only OS you would run on this conceivably would be Ultrix. And again, I'm promising it within a few days, probably this weekend, I'll have some time to record it. This is just like kind of a little quick thing that was throwing me off that I wanted to talk about. But hopefully this weekend I'll be able to really dig into Ultrix in a couple at least one video, or maybe just one really long or a couple shorter ones. It's it makes SunOS 4, right? SunOS 4, which I shown here. Maybe I've shown SunOS 4. If not, I definitely need to do a video on that too. It makes that seem modern for its 1993 release of Ultrix. Makes SunOS 4, which is the same vintage, seem like a modern operating system. I mean, it really is. And Ultrix is an interesting mix of BSD and System 5, so it's got that sort of SunOS thing going on. Well, SunOS is a lot more BSD, but it's pretty goofy. So that's kind of what I'm wondering about is the prices on this old deck gear is insane. I guess some of the VAC stations you could run VMS if you want a VMS workstation. It's not an alpha. Alphas are also really expensive, and the Itanium they really didn't make much in the way of workstations. I think they had the 2600 could be in like a desk side tower with graphics, but the rest of them are rack mount. So if you wanted an open VMS workstation, but again, these things, I mean, even the fastest VAC station is still going to be pretty slow. Alpha station could be pretty snappy, especially with VMS is pretty lightweight. But yeah, so blew my mind. Um, but what we haven't looked at is the RS6000, which might be fun to get one to do some videos on. So look at that. You get a third of a gigahertz with a drive and some memory. So again, IBM stuff seems to have a little bit of a premium on Sun, but not as much. So there you go. I mean, that's not bad. Dual power PC, $899. So it's SGI, and that one's a little bit higher price for performance there. But you get again AIX was more server, but they still did make some workstations. Not seeing a whole lot of the. Oh, here we go. Here's a nice classic form. Ooh, well, that one's really expensive. Yeah, that's a little off. So I don't know if this is a function that just Sun made a lot more workstations. They were more ubiquitous. Therefore, supply and demand says demand for all these antiques is roughly the same across vendors, and supply for the Suns is much higher than these others. Or is it that the ones that were less easily replaced in the field. So people may still be doing actual work on some of these things from DEC, IBM, maybe SGI, although I find that hard to believe. I think that is more hobbyists. I know my Microvax, right? So it's a little Microvax 3100. That was formerly out of a neighboring state's Department of Elections, and the last certification on it was like 2007, 2008. I mean, that's crazy that they had that running. I mean, the thing was built in the, I think, what, 88 or 89. I mean, good long lifespan, and that's what you'd expect. And that's why some of this Sun gear from, my SparkStation 10 is, again, almost, it's over a 20-year lifespan. It's still going strong. Other stuff. These workstations, they were built much better than PCs. They could run for these long durations and still be sort of usable. But I think maybe it's because IBM and DEC and SGI to some degree. Again, I think that's more people are just into graphics and they're cool. And I don't know, maybe fans of Jurassic Park. I don't know. Um, so they have a slightly different market, but the IBM, but to a much greater degree, the stuff from Digital and later on Compaq and HP that does the VMS or the True 64 or maybe Ultrix, that because that's in use in government or defense applications, people are still actually trying to do real work, and that's why this market is this way. I don't know, something to think about. It's probably a very uninteresting ramble to just about everyone, but thanks for listening, and leave a comment below. Let me know what you think. Why the discrepancy in workstation prices? Thanks.